Welcome to the In My Opinion show. I am Henry Hatter, your host today. I have with me Robert Garza. Bob, I'm going to call him Bob. Bob is an educator, a writer, a musician, and just simply a great, good old American. Again, thank you, Robert, for returning to the show again, the In My Opinion show. We've had some great discussions over the years. Today, we would like to talk about Cinco de Mayo. Mm-hmm. Although Cinco de Mayo does not occur until May, but this is the diversity month in America, in the United States. And we ask you to come on our show to share with us experiences that people have when they celebrate Cinco de Mayo, and why that should be important and relevant to our own lives as companion Americans, as Black Americans, as white Americans, and as Hispanics, mm-hmm. etc. So I'm going to ask you, what does Cinco de Mayo mean?
Well, I would like to say thank you very much, Henry, for inviting me to your program. It's always a pleasure to come here and share some information. First of all, Cinco de Mayo is not Mexico's Independence Day. That's September 16th. So a lot of people confuse it. Cinco de Mayo is May 5th. Mexico Independence Day is in September. So Cinco de Mayo is a celebration that grew out of an event that happened a long time ago in Mexico in 1862. What happened at that time was that the French army was trying to invade Mexico, and they had a pretty good chance of doing that because they had a much bigger army. They were more well equipped than the smaller Mexican army that was less equipped and less numbers. So the Mexican army defeated the French, and as a result of that, people have been celebrating that particular day of May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, ever since. Here in the United States, it has become, in a way, more dominant than the actual Independence Day of Mexico that is celebrated in September. So if you go to Mexico, you'll see a much, much bigger celebration of their Independence Day in September rather than in May, Cinco de Mayo. So basically that is what happened in history and how we today in the United States celebrate this event by having fiestas all over the country. And as I also understand, other parts of the world also celebrate Cinco de Mayo.
Bob, I'm listening to your comments here, and then I'm comparing that to what's going on in the United States and worldwide with respect to undocumented Americans. Mm-hmm. And so far, with your presentation, you have not touched a nerve. And I can't understand why we have this difficulty around the country, and I don't want to dwell on that, but I want other people to take a look at your approach. It's non-combative and based on not public policy, but it's based on cultural aspects of what Cinco de Mayo brings to cultures to share in those experiences. Would you like to further explain that?
Well, to look at perhaps how this particular fiesta has grown so huge in the United States, I think it comes from looking at different aspects of the culture. So, for example, one of the most easiest way to try to understand a culture is to, for example, look at their food. Right? We can explore a culture, any culture, by simply exploring the food, and that, to me, that's a great way of doing it, right? So if you have an event, if you have a fiesta of some sort that certain groups of people are putting on in your community, whether it be Latino or whether it be German or some other fiesta, you can go to it with the ideas that I'm going to explore the food to try to understand the culture a little bit. I'm going to listen to the music. Maybe I'm going to dance a little bit. Right? Maybe I'm going to look at their art. Maybe I'm going to learn more about their history. So that is an excellent way for us to explore other cultures, right?
Yes.
Excellent way. Right?
And it's a way of creating international relationships with other countries and other people to keep down war and create areas that are livable and that prevent war and stuff like that between adjacent countries.
Yeah, we do that with, for example, St. Patrick's Day in March. You know, a lot of people assume, you know, and slide right into that culture. You know, they go to events, they go to celebrations to celebrate the food, you know, the music, the art, and to participate and interact. That's what we need to do, is interact with people.
My wife and I would go to Saginaw to celebrations, but they were not for Cinco de Mayo. We usually would go with friends who had a wedding or ceremony of some kind, and we loved the Mexican music and the food and the camaraderie that we've had.
Right. It develops a very friendly atmosphere, right, where you feel comfortable, right, versus, you know, taking some other approach to learning about a culture. And it's just an excellent way of doing it. Right?
In my investigation of Cinco de Mayo from Wikipedia, I found that there are other countries that celebrate, non-American countries that celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Would you believe that Ireland celebrates it? Canada and others. And yet it's far removed from the location of where Cinco de Mayo occurred and would appear to have no relevancy. But somehow, how do you think that relevancy became to exist?
Well, when you look at it from the standpoint of history, all right, perhaps people really do want to learn more about other ethnic groups. When you look at it through the idea of just having a good fiesta, I think that opens the door for many people to explore other people through those elements of music, art, food, and so forth, dance, and so forth. So, and it also brings us into the historical content. And for many people in the United States, they tend to forget, or perhaps they need to be reminded that the Southwest of the United States, a good portion of that used to belong to Spain. And after that, when Mexico gained its independence, it was then territory of Mexico. So it wasn't until the mid 1800s where Mexico lost that territory to the United States in the U.S.-Mexican War. And then they, as a result of winning that war, they gained all that territory for the United States. So,
let me ask you, speaking of owning the Southwest, now the Mexicans were very, very powerful people. They were part of the Aztecs'
heritage.
Now, what we know about the Aztecs, they were very well developed culturally, militaristically, art, and all of that. But looking at Mexico when it was dominant, there was a time it was dominant on this continent. Did they ever have any ambitions to colonialize like the Europeans did?
I don't recall any, reading anything that pertained
They had
to
no
that.
ambition.
No, I don't. That I recall, that reading about that. Mexico for a long time went through very, very many presidents and rulers and emperors and dictators, and they had a whole variety of rulers in Mexico, and a lot of it was, for them, trying to control what was going on around Mexico City, all right? And part of the reason that Mexico lost its territory to the north, because they weren't focused on the territory to the north. They were more focused in central Mexico. So that was part of the reason.
Bob, we're going to have to stop right there and take a look at the video.
Oh, great. Great.
As we go through this, I believe that
Yeah.
after that, you can come back and explain.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, to begin with, it is not Mexico's Independence Day of September 16th. It is, rather, a historic battle between the invading French army and the Mexican army in Puebla, Mexico in 1862. May 5th is the date in which the Mexican army defeated a much larger and powerful French army. By doing so, Mexico delayed another foreign invasion. But the story does not end. It was only one of numerous battles in Mexico's long history of achieving independence from European dominance. The primary cause of the French invasion was because Mexico had borrowed money from France, Spain, and England. Mexico was unable to pay back the loan, mainly because of the social reform of 1857 to 1860, known as La Guerra de Reforma. While Spain and England could wait for a payment from Mexico, France would not. So, France decided to invade Mexico. People in Mexico remember this date because it represents a part of their liberation from many countries that tried to dominate it. As a result of the victory over the French army, Mexico realized its power. Cinco de Mayo in Mexico. In Mexico, Cinco de Mayo is called La Batalla de Puebla. It's here in the United States that the event became better known as Cinco de Mayo. This event is celebrated with parades, concerts, fiestas, folklore dancers, food, art, and other cultural expressions. The event does not have the splendor of Mexico's Independence Day on September 16th. Cinco de Mayo in the U.S. Well, if you remember in the video Son los Países, I mentioned that the southwest U.S. was once a part of Mexico. Mexicans and Mexican Americans have celebrated cultural events in the Southwest for many years. Cinco de Mayo is celebrated here in the U.S. because it's a reminder for Mexicans and other Latinos to remember their heritage, ethnicity, and to reaffirm their cultural roots. In regions of the United States with a high Mexican American population, like the Southwest, Midwest, Chicago, and New York, Cinco de Mayo is very popular. You will also see events here in Michigan and in other states celebrating this event. For many, it's a good opportunity to join in on the celebration and party. Cross-cultural inspiration. Just like non-Irish people celebrate St. Patrick's Day in the U.S., Cinco de Mayo has crossed over within other ethnic groups. Again, many join in on this cultural celebration. Non-Latinos find this celebration very inviting, especially with the food, music, art, and other cultural activities.
Cinco de Mayo en México entran franceses a conquistar. Los mexicanos defendieron patria linda y querida hasta el final. Cinco de Mayo hoy en México celebran todos su victoria. Cinco de Mayo en México entran franceses a conquistar. Los mexicanos defendieron patria linda y querida hasta el final. Cinco de Mayo hoy en México celebran todos su victoria.
Okay, Bob, now we were talking about the videos running now, and we can continue to talk. So Mexico had no ambition to expand its territory within the United States after, say, 1848. That was the Mexican War with California, with Texas. Texas independence, right?
Right.
And that was a war that ceded that Southwest
Mhm.
to the Americans.
Mhm.
To the United States.
Right.
But prior to that, they just wanted to hang on to the territories that they had and had no ambition beyond that.
Hmm. Yeah, another thing that was happening at that time too was the immigration from other parts of the world that were going into what is now Texas, right? So a lot of influences were happening, a lot of dynamics were happening at that time, and as a result, that movement continued to grow and grow and grow, and Mexico was just acting too slow on that, right? And perhaps it was just, fate, or maybe it was just destiny that things changed and turned out that way. But that's what happened.
Do you see some regrets from young Mexican Americans today as a result of the loss of that Southwest to the United States? For example, when you see kids who Mexican Americans at schools, public schools, that would turn the flag upside down or burn it, is that kind of a resentment or reaction or to that, or
you mean to the loss of the territory?
Yes, yeah.
I'm not sure about that, all right, but I do know that one of the issues today is dealing with how the United States should be very separate from Mexico, right? talk of the wall and so forth. But remember that people were migrating back and forth, since probably early 1500s, from what is now Mexico into what is now the United States. So they were crossing back and forth, since that time. So I think that may be a little.
I never heard that
resentment,
aspect of that because there was so much noise, political noise, over what was developing, and people got involved on both sides of the equation, the debate, and we never heard anything but fluff. But it never occurred to me that people had been for years transferring back and across that boundary without impediments.
Without any, right? So in that process too, how we can tie this to Cinco de Mayo is a lot of vocabulary because of that territory, the history of that territory being tied to Spain and then to Mexico.
Sure.
I mean, there's many states in the United States that are named that have Spanish names. All right, California is one. All right, Arizona.
If we didn't name them that, the English and the French would have come along.
Yeah. Well, there are
taking back the territory.
Many of those were already had the name, and the most obvious is Nuevo Mexico, New Mexico. Not to mention all the cities and major cities in the Southwest. San Francisco, San Antonio, San Jose, all those are Spanish names,
Oh, okay. Tell me, where could we go around Flint or Saginaw and find the celebration of Cinco de Mayo? And why should we come?
Oh, okay. Well, number one is the reason you should come is because I mentioned before, is the food, It's always great to eat terrific ethnic food. It's always great to...
You're making me hungry.
It's always great... Well, you can dance afterwards. Always great to listen to music and dance, and all those elements that I mentioned in art, they also are a mix of different cultures, For example, with the music, the Germans were very much into what is now Texas, before, when it was still Mexico, right? So they brought over their instruments, and one instrument that they used was the button accordion. The Mexicans in Texas, adopted that and used that in their music. When we talk about foods, it's a mixture of different cultures. The corn tortilla was very much a native Indian food, and then with the Germans, the people in what is now Texas, used to be Mexico, but those people adapted to and used the flour, the wheat flour. So and then they started to make their tortillas from wheat flour. And we see that in other aspects of the food. We see that in the art. It's a combination of different elements. So,
Bob, while I'm thinking about it, explain to me, now Mexicans have a unique musical style, taste and tone that practically everybody loves. And they have great dances. But can you explain to me why that Mexicans are fascinated with the instruments from Ireland and Scotland? Because sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference in certain segments of the music when they're playing. Why are they fascinated?
Well, like all cultures, all right, they borrow, so to speak, or they utilize from other cultures. So one very popular music with some people from Mexico is the mariachi music, and that's very much European. Violins, trumpets, guitars, but they added some of their own instruments. They have a guitarrón, which is a bass. You play this way instead of an upright, that was one of their instruments. Bringing in the accordion to another style of music. Music out of Mexico and the influence that came out of there has developed many styles. Right?
But it's unique from the United States. If you look at cultures inside the United States, say for example the Black American culture, they don't use necessarily a large combination of the same.
There's Latino jazz that's been around many years. All right, so that's the influence. That's the influence from the Black culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the jazz musicians from the U.S. and that blended in with the rhythms from Latin America. So it produced a very unique style of music. So.
I was basically referring to the accordion.
Oh, the accordion, yeah.
And that music is so pretty.
Yeah.
When I introduced it.
Yeah, when you listen to accordion music, that some people refer to it as Latino music or Tejano music. You know, it's very much influenced by the Europeans, by the Germans, the Polish. You know, they use that instrument in their music and still do today. You know.
I cannot imagine people never doing the cha-cha-cha. That's typically Mexican, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very well loved among Black Americans and everybody else. Explain, why did that take on so rapidly and endure so long?
Yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but most dances come up from the lower part of society, and then they move up, and then they're accepted by the upper class. You know,
and claimed.
Yeah. So it's just you. I don't think you can escape how music moves you. Right? It makes you move. You know, that's fun. You know, and then you can dance. You know, and have a good time. So, music, dancing is an excellent way to get to know a particular culture. You know, and then every culture has a mixture of elements from other groups that come into the music, that come into the art, that come into the food, and so forth. So
you know, I've never seen anybody complain against the Mexican music. It is very well accepted in all cultures, and everybody like to dance to it. And I've seen elements of other cultures flow into the Mexican as well, on the music, and like you say it.
Yeah, I mean, even today, you know, with the hip hop and other styles of popular music for the kids, you know, you can hear that in Spanish too. You know?
Yes,
it's very popular.
Okay, well, Robert, you know, we've got to bring the show to a close, and I really enjoyed you today, and you've brought to us a great conversation about why, through culture, we need to combine our sentiments together in North America.
Yeah.
And
so here's a little thing for the teachers out there. You know, they can view that video and get ideas of what they can do in their classroom. You know, language, especially if they're teaching Spanish. All right. The music, the dancing, and so forth. They can bring all that in, the history. You know. So into their classrooms, and their students can learn something from it.
From my research and in your conversation today, and I hope all of our audience out there will get the same sentiment that I did. We've appreciated you, we love you, and we hope that things will settle down for that part of the world.
Thank you.
This is the time that the In My Opinion show must come to a close. And till then, stay focused.